Hello, hello, rockers. Hello. Here we are again with a short story and analysis. Yes, with literary devices and a lot of stuff. Okay, debatable questions. Okay, the name of the short story is Birthday Party, and it was written in 1946 by Catherine Brush. Wow, 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 wow. It's a very short story and poignant. Let's see. Let's start with a reading. Okay. And it starts like this. They were a couple in their late 30s, and they looked unmistakably married. They sat on the banquette opposite us in a little narrow restaurant, having dinner. The man had a round, self satisfied face with glasses on it. The woman was fadingly pretty in a big hat. There was nothing conspicuous about them, nothing particularly noticeable, until the end of their meal, when it suddenly became obvious that this was an occasion, in fact, the husband's birthday. And the wife had planned a little surprise for him. It arrived in the form of a small but glossy birthday cake with one pink candle burning in the center. The head waiter brought it in and placed it before the husband, and meanwhile the violin and piano orchestra played Happy Birthday to You, and the wife beamed with shy pride over her little surprise. And such few people as there were in the restaurant tried to help out with a pattering of applause. It became clear at once that help was needed because the husband was not pleased. Instead, he was hotly embarrassed and indignant at his wife for embarrassing him. You look at him and you saw this, you thought, oh no, don't be like that. But he was like that. And as soon as the little cake had been deposited on the table, and the orchestra had finished the birthday piece, and the general attention had shifted from the man and the woman, I saw him say something to her under his breath, some punishing thing, quick and curt and unkind. I couldn't bear to look at the woman then, so I stared at my plate and waited for quite a long time. Not long enough, though. She was still crying when I finally glanced over there again, crying quietly and heartbrokenly and hopelessly, all to herself under the gay big brim of her best hat. Chun chun, that was it. So how can you picture the image? That's the end, all right? Yes, that's the end. What do you think about it? What are the five parts of the plot? Yes, the beginning, the exposition, rising up, the climax, and the falling action and the development. Think about them. Now, I asked the artificial intelligence to create, yes, some pictures about it. Look, tan, tan, tan. There you are. Okay, let me share them with you. This is the beginning. Okay, married couple in a small restaurant. Surprise! Happy birthday! Happy birthday to you! Do, 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 do. And he was not pleased. Dun, 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 harsh whisper. This is so embarrassing. How could you do this? I looked away, but then she was crying, crying quietly and all alone. So, look at that. So, coming back to some of the vocabulary, very quickly. Yes, this banquet means that they were in a long row. I mean, it's a small restaurant, very intimate, okay, but they were in a long, like a long table, yes, and the bench. That's why they're sitting one next to the other. And the narrator, who is, I mean, the narrator is the one who visualizes and tells us the story, okay? He's opposite them. He can picture everything, all right? But it looks like it's quite intimate, quite small. And and it says, for example, here, unmistakable married. Wow, because when you're just married, let's say in the late 30s, very young, okay. So there's some hello, how are you, darling? No, some movements between the couple. So you say, okay, this is no. They looked married. Otherwise, they're very sharp. Now the question of okay, being sitting next to one, yes, shoulder to shoulder. That's also nice and conspicuous, as you said, it's noticeable. You could say nothing about it. Okay. And then where it says the wife had planned, is a past perfect. Had planned means that the woman went with the prepared for that. Okay. She took the cake in advance. She prepared the music, the orchestra. Okay. She arranged with had a waiter. So that was preparation before. That's why the past perfect. No, que en el momento, simple past, okay? It's his birthday. Do you have a candle? Because a pink candle, it's questionable. I would have chosen that, but well, she chose a pink candle. All right. And pay attention to this one. It became clear at once that help was needed. Passive voice. Help was needed. Hello. Nos toca ayudarte. Hey, happy birthday. And the person is hot, very hot, was not pleased. Ha. Well, and Kurt, not Ruth. That guy was rude. Think about it. The story was written in 1946. So women were obedient. Women were possession, okay? The wife of her. Well, I have never got married, so I don't know. So it says here, birthday party is a masterclass in subtle storytelling through irony, symbolism, and sharp contrast juxtaposition. Catherine Brash, exposes the fragility of human relationships and the pain of unreciprocated affection. Analysis. Okay. This is a poignant vignette about marital dynamics, public humiliation, because it's terrible, and emotional cruelty. Theme of love and rejection. The wife's gesture is tender and thoughtful, but her husband interprets it as an embarrassment. Que papelón. This highlights how affection can be misread or dismissed, especially in relationships where pride and ego dominate. Central theme. The story powerfully explores the theme that not everything is what it seems, revealing the sadness beneath a seemingly normal celebration. Now, gender and social expectations. The wife is described as fadingly pretty, suggesting societal pressures on women to maintain beauty and charm. Her effort to please her husband reflects traditional expectation of women as caretakers of emotional life. His rejection underscores the imbalance of power. Public versus private personas. The husband's embarrassment stems from being publicly celebrated, revealing his discomfort with vulnerability. His whispered cruelty contrasts with the wife's public displays of affection, showing how private words can wound, pueden herir, more deeply than public gestures. Ay, stabbing in your neck. Narrator's role. The narrator acts as a witness, unable to intervene. That's a problem, but deeply affected. And this is what the narrator transmits us, yeah? The use of second person narration when he says, remember at the end that he says, you could have said that, you, and he uses a you, forces the reader to share the narrator's discomfort, making us complicit in the act of watching cruelty unfold. Agreed. Emotional impact. The story's brevity intensifies its effect. In just a few paragraphs, Brush captures the collapse of a moment meant to be joyful into one of despair. The final image, crying quietly and heartbrokenly and hopelessly, mira la cantidad de adverbs, all to herself, se lo guardo acá y no se le va a salir más, under the gay big brim of her best hat. Remember that gay also means happy. Cuando, miren, en los noventas, I was a teacher in a bilingual school, and I had to teach, we are all happy and gay. Imagine that. A few years after, I couldn't sing that. Porque los pibitos, los nenes de 5 o 6 años me decían, ¿cómo happy and gay? I am not gay. Pero gay. Sorry, gay means happy originally. Bueno, a memory, un recuerdo. Ok, vamos con literary devices. Irony, yes, irony. Situational irony versus dramatic. A birthday celebration, socially coded as joyful, becomes an occasion of humiliation and emotional violence. Dramatic irony. The wife believes she's given pleasure, while the reader quickly realizes the husband experiences the event as an attack on his pride. Ah, le tocaron el orgullo. ¿Puedo decir fuck off? Sorry. Symbolism. The birthday cake represents affection, care, and public acknowledgement of love. The single pink cake candle, suggests fragility, intimacy, and vulnerability. The woman's best hat, a symbol of dignity and effort, later turned into a shelter, no? La protegía, for private grief. The restaurant, a public space that magnifies private cruelty. Pobres. Imagery, visual, vivid descriptions of the couple. The man had a round, self satisfied face. The woman was fadingly pretty in a big hat. These sensory details help readers visualize the scene and feel its emotional weight. Fíjense, a very short story, a few characters. Tenemos la pareja, the woman, the wife, and the husband. The narrator, que dice us, so the narrator is with somebody else. And a few elements, but a lot of descriptive elements, adjectives, adverbs. Small but glossy birthday cake, one pink candle burning, gay big brim on her best hat. Man, a lot of adjectives. These bright celebratory images clash with the emotional darkness that follows, obviously. Irony. The wife's surprise is meant to bring joy, as we said before, but instead it humiliates her husband and leads to her heartbreak. Le rompió el corazón y tutti. Red flag! I remember I never got married, but I once was dating a guy, Christian. This is for you, Christian. And we met at the restaurant and we went to eat pizza. And I was so romantic that I took a slice of pizza and I wanted to feed him. This was in the late 90s. Wow, that was a red flag and I didn't realize. I felt embarrassed, yeah, because he rejected that. He said, don't do that here again. Ahora cualquiera lo reconoce como una red flag. But at that moment, even though I realized, I said, okay, no, it's okay. And I obeyed. Fuck off, Christian. I should have got up and left, and you pay the bill. I remember that I also paid the bill. I shouldn't have. One. Situational irony, the expected happiness of a birthday celebration turns into sadness. Symbolism, the cake, the candle symbolize love, celebration, and the wife's effort to honor, si no pronuncia la H, her husband. The rejection symbolizes crushed affection. The hat symbolizes her attempt to look her best and present herself proudly. Miren, me encanta. A mí los hats, I love them. Okay. But it becomes a cover for her tears, como dijimos antes. It becomes her shelter at the end. I dropped the telephone. Tone shift and mood. Tone shifts from light-hearted to observational to somber and tragic. And observational, but claro, one looks at each other, okay? They are there, intimated. Mood moves from cheerful anticipation to discomfort and sadness. It begins neutral, almost observational, as we said before, because people could see each other. There's a lot of description, okay? Moves into discomfort and moral judgment, ends in quiet devastation. Se le mina echa pelota at the end, pero under her shelter, under her hat. The narration, this is very important. First person observer narrator, limited and peripheral. The narrator, hello, the narrator is a bystander. They cannot intervene, only witness, mirroring the reader's helplessness, the reader's discomfort. O sea, nos pone a nosotros incómodos también, ¿no? Hace eso. Y fíjense lo de second person address. Ahí cuando dice, you looked at him and you saw this and you thought, don't do this. ¿Se acuerdan cuando como que le mandaba el mensaje, don't do it, and he does it. This device pulls the reader directly into the scene, making them complicit and in witnessing and the cruelty. ¿Se entiende? O sea, the narrator makes you, the reader, participate in the shame. Juxtaposition. Joy versus cruelty, the wife's shy pride versus the husband's hot embarrassment, the wife's hopeful surprise versus the husband's cold rejection, public celebration versus private punishment, the public festivity versus the private cruelty whispered under his breath, music and applause versus silence and tears. Repetition and syntax. Y acuérdense que era una short story de 4 párrafos, en realidad yo la dividí, pero long cumulative sentences reflect social momentum. Short clipped phrases mirror the husband's cruelty and emotional rupture. The word crying is repeated with modifiers quietly and heartbrokenly and hopelessly to emphasize her devastation. Un montón de adverbs, como habíamos dicho. Alliteration, subtle examples, vanishing thing, quick and curt and unkind. The harsh consonants echo the cruelty of his words. This is alliteration sounds. Characterization, direct versus indirect. Round, self-satisfied face, fadingly pretty. Indirect, the husband's whispered remarks reveals cruelty and control. The wife's silent crying reveals emotional dependence and resignation. It's a red flag! Go away! Understatement. Some punishing thing, quick and curt and unkind. The vagueness intensifies the cruelty by forcing the reader to imagine the words. Totally. Pathos. The story appeals strongly to the reader's empathy, especially in the final paragraph. Metonymy. I saw him say something to her under his breath. Speech stands in for emotional abuse and power dynamics. Now, Catherine Brush, the birthday party, it's birthday party, not the, exposes the quiet brutality that can exist within ordinary marriages. The story is deceptively simple. No dramatic confrontation, no raised voices, no public scandal. Instead, Brush uses restraint as a weapon, allowing a single whispered sentence to devastate an entire emotional world. The public setting is crucial. The restaurant, the music, and the polite applause from a social stage where happiness is expected to perform on cue. Within this space, the wife's surprise cake is not merely a gift, but a gesture of love offered in front of witnesses. When the husband reacts with embarrassment and anger, his response becomes not just personal or punitive. He reclaims control by humiliating her privately after the public gaze has moved on. Chan chan. Gaze is a way of looking. Irony fuels the story's emotional impact. The cake, the candle, and the song are symbols of celebration, yet they provoke cruelty rather than gratitude. Brush sharpens this irony through imagery that remains cheerful even as the emotional temperature drops. The pink candle continues to glow while the wife collapses inward, crying quietly and heartbrokenly and hopelessly. The adverse stack like weighs, ¿no? Como que pesa mucho todos esos adverbs, emphasizing the depth and finality of her despair. Hmm? Now, the final image of the woman crying beneath her gay big brim of a hat is devastating. The hat, once chosen with care, becomes a fragile shield, concealing suffering in plain sight. The story closes without resolution, suggesting that this moment is not an exception but a pattern. Un patrón, como que se repite. The birthday is over, but the marriage, with all its quiet cruelty, goes on. Who had the cake? Sure. Sorry. I searched for to check if the story continued. Who had the cake? Who had the cake? Who? Sorry, this is not to make fun, but well, now we are in 2026 and things have changed so much. Hmm. Well, how does some debatable questions, all right? How does Catherine Brush present the balance of power in the marriage in the birthday party? Birthday party. How does the writer make the ending of the story powerful? Is the party meant to celebrate life or expose social emptiness? Does the protagonist experience personal growth by the end of the story? How does Brush use irony to criticize social conventions? Is conformity portrayed as necessary or harmful? Can the party be interpreted as a symbol of adulthood? Well, we've got a lot more questions to debate in class, okay? But, well, I hope you enjoyed it, okay? Because it's a short story with a lot of info. And again, how do you manifest this in today's society? Hmm? And I asked another AI to illustrate this. But at first, I told the AI, come on, you changed the woman in the first. Then they were not sitting opposite. It's good because you can identify errors, okay? But the picture at the end with that, I love it because it's a huge hat, all right? But the first one, it looks like 11 from Stranger Things. She's like, what are you doing with 11 in the picture? Sorry. I am so much influenced by the series. Okay, bueno. I hope you enjoyed the story. It's very good for debate. Okay, and there's a lot of analysis. Last year, girls were young, so they needed to recognize, identify red flags. They tell you, red flag, stop. Young women are very good at that. And they immediately move on. They wouldn't stay like this woman. What about you? And that's an example I told you about my experience. I remember I continued a little more, not much, but I didn't say anything that day. Horrible. Well, that's it. Life is life. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.